The stars looked different from the command deck of the Vraxian warship Dominator. Commander Zexthal stood with his scaled hands clasped behind his back, yellow eyes fixed on the small blue-green planet displayed on the main view screen. His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Vexnar, approached with a data tablet. Preliminary scans complete, Commander. The third planet is rich with resources and inhabited by a dominant bipedal species. They call themselves humans and their planet, Earth. Zexthal's mouth ridges curled into what passed for a smile among his kind. In 300 cycles of service to the Galactic Consortium, he had overseen the conquest of 17 worlds. None had offered meaningful resistance. This isolated planet, far from any developed region of space, would be his easiest victory, yet. Their technology? He asked. Primitive, Vexnar replied. They have achieved nuclear fission, basic space travel within their system, and global communications. No energy shields, no faster-than-light capabilities, no particle weapons. Zexthal flicked his tail with satisfaction. Another simple harvest for the consortium. Deploy observation drones. I want detailed information on their military capabilities and governmental structures before we reveal ourselves. As you command, Vexnar said, bowing slightly before returning to his station. The commander turned back to study the planet, so blue, so seemingly peaceful. The Vraxians had a saying, "The calmest waters hide the sharpest teeth." But what teeth could these humans possibly have that would concern the deadliest species in the known galaxy? Sam Mercer pulled his jacket tighter against the biting Alaskan wind as he crossed the parking lot of the Coldfoot Remote Sensing Station. At 28, he was the youngest radar technician at the facility, which meant he often got stuck with the overnight shift. He nodded to the security guard and swiped his ID card at the entrance. Another exciting night watching empty skies, huh, Sam? The guard called after him. Someone's got to do it, Sam replied with a smile, though he secretly agreed. The radar station, built during the Cold War to watch for Russian bombers, now mostly tracked weather patterns and the occasional research aircraft. Inside the warm control room, Sam relieved the evening shift operator, poured himself coffee, and settled in for his 12 hours of watching screens. About 3 hours into his shift, something unusual appeared on the monitor, a brief blip at high altitude, moving too fast for commercial aircraft. Sam adjusted the equipment settings, thinking it might be a glitch. The blip reappeared, then vanished. He picked up the phone to report the anomaly to his supervisor. "Hey Rick, it's Sam over at Coldfoot. I'm seeing something weird on the high-altitude scan." "Satellite debris, probably," Rick's sleepy voice replied. "You know how much junk is up there these days?" "Maybe, but it's moving in a pattern, almost like it's searching for something." Rick sighed. "Log it in the system and run a diagnostic on the equipment. If it shows up again, call me back." Sam hung up and ran the diagnostic. Everything checked out fine. When the blip appeared a third time, he began recording the data. Something wasn't right, but he knew without evidence, nobody would believe him. Lily Hoffman tucked her 8-year-old son Kyle into bed in their farmhouse just outside of Ainsworth, Nebraska. The large window beside his bed gave a perfect view of the night sky far from city lights. "Mom, tell me about the stars again," Kyle said, fighting sleep. Lily smiled. Since her husband's death 2 years ago, she had managed the farm alone, but always made time for these bedtime moments. Well, each one of those tiny lights could have planets like ours circling around them. Maybe some even have people looking back at us wondering if we're here too. "Do you think aliens are real?" Kyle asked, his eyes wide. "The universe is a big place," Lily replied. "It would be pretty lonely if we were the only ones in it." She kissed his forehead and was about to turn off the lamp when Kyle suddenly pointed out the window. "Mom, look!" Lily turned and saw a bright light moving across the sky. Too fast and too low for a shooting star. Too silent for an airplane. "Probably a satellite," she said, though something about its movement made her uneasy. The light hovered, then abruptly changed direction in a way no man-made object could. "That's not a satellite," Kyle whispered. Lily pulled the curtains closed. "Time for sleep. We've got early chores tomorrow." But long after Kyle had fallen asleep, Lily sat by the kitchen window, watching the strange lights move across the night sky above their cornfield. In the White House Situation Room, President Laura Bennett was being briefed by General Harold Mason on increasing reports of unusual aerial phenomena. "We're receiving similar reports from military bases in 23 countries," the general explained, pointing to a map with red dots scattered across every continent. "Whatever these objects are, they're conducting a coordinated global surveillance operation. Could it be some kind of new Russian or Chinese technology?" the president asked. "Not likely, Madam President. The observed capabilities exceed any known aerospace technology by several generations. These objects can hover motionless, then accelerate to over 15,000 miles per hour instantly. They've been observed entering and exiting the ocean without slowing down." National Security Advisor Paul Garcia spoke up. "We need to consider the possibility that we're dealing with non-terrestrial technology." The room fell silent. President Bennett removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. "What you're suggesting would change human history forever. We need more than blurry radar images before we can even consider that possibility." "Madam President," General Mason said quietly, "whatever these things are, they're watching us, studying us, and they don't want us to know they're here." From the cloaked observation post orbiting Earth, Drone Commander Krasvel compiled his findings for Commander Zexthal. The humans were more organized than initially thought, with nation-states possessing nuclear weapons and standing armies. Still, nothing that would threaten Vraxian battle cruisers. More interesting was their biology. Unlike the reptilian Vraxians, humans were warm-blooded mammals with shorter lifespans but faster reproduction rates. Their social structures were complex with competing governments and belief systems. Yet they showed remarkable cooperation in certain areas, particularly their primitive space programs. When Commander Zexthal received the report, he called his war council together. "We have gathered sufficient intelligence," he announced. "This species lacks the unity and technology to resist us. We will begin the standard conquest protocol: display of force, demand for surrender, followed by targeted strikes against military assets." Sub-Commander Vexnar voiced a rare concern. "The humans show unusual adaptability in their short history. Perhaps we should observe longer before engaging." Zexthal dismissed the suggestion with a wave of his clawed hand. "They've barely left their own atmosphere. What possible threat could these primitives pose to the Vraxian Empire?" The decision was made. The invasion fleet would decloak within 3 Earth days, and the conquest of humanity would begin. As the council dispersed, Zexthal studied the holographic image of Earth once more. Soon it would be just another resource-rich colony in the ever-expanding consortium. Little did he know that the humans, while technologically inferior, possessed qualities that no previous species had demonstrated when facing Vraxian conquest, qualities that would soon make the deadliest species in the galaxy question everything they thought they knew about warfare and survival. The day the Vraxian ships appeared in Earth's skies began like any other. People went to work, children attended school, and life continued in its normal rhythm until 11:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That was when the massive shadow fell over New York City. Similar shadows darkened the skies above London, Beijing, Moscow, Cairo, and 20 other major cities around the world. The Vraxian warships hovered silently, each one longer than 4 football fields, their dark metal hulls reflecting no light. In Times Square, people stopped and looked up, phones recording the impossible sight. Traffic halted as drivers abandoned their cars to stare skyward. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then every screen in the square, billboards, phone displays, storefront televisions, flickered and showed the same image: a reptilian face with yellow eyes and ridged scales. "People of Earth," Commander Zexthal said in perfect English, his voice simultaneously broadcasting in local languages worldwide. "I am Commander Zexthal of the Galactic Consortium. Your planet is now under our control. Resistance is futile and will result in unnecessary loss of life. Cooperate, and you may serve rather than perish." The message repeated 3 times before the screens returned to normal. Then the panic began. In the Pentagon's command center, alarms blared as reports flooded in from around the globe. Major Alan Carter, a veteran with 15 years of combat experience in the Middle East, stood rigid as satellite feeds showed the alien ships positioned over major cities worldwide. "What's our defensive capability against these things?" General Mason asked the room full of military officials. "Unknown, sir," a colonel replied. "Our jets can't reach their altitude. Missile systems are standing by, but we don't know if they'll have any effect." The president's face appeared on the main screen. "General, I'm authorizing defensive measures. But I want to be clear, we do not fire first. Position our assets but hold until they show hostile intent." "With all due respect, Madam President," Alan spoke up. "Occupying our airspace and threatening our people is already hostile intent." The president's expression hardened. "I understand your concern, Major, but we're dealing with technology far beyond our own. I won't risk escalating this situation until we've exhausted diplomatic options." As if in response, an aide rushed in with a report. "Sir, the UN Secretary General has received a communication. The aliens are demanding world leaders assemble in New York within 24 hours to discuss terms of surrender." General Mason looked to the president, who nodded grimly. "Tell them I'll be there." After the call ended, Alan approached the general. "Sir, request permission to assemble a special tactical unit. If things go wrong, we need to be ready." The general studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Granted, but keep it off the books. If these aliens are monitoring our communications, I don't want them to know we're preparing for a fight." In Moscow, Dr. Natalie Wright sat in the hastily assembled International Science Center, surrounded by the brightest minds pulled from research institutions around the world. On the table before them lay pieces of twisted metal and strange components, debris from a small Vraxian scout ship shot down over Siberia by an experimental Russian electromagnetic pulse weapon. "The material composition is unlike anything in our periodic table," Natalie said, examining a piece under a microscope. "It seems to change properties when exposed to different energy frequencies." Her colleague, Dr. Yuri Petrov, looked up from his analysis of what appeared to be a communication device. "The power source is still active. It generates energy without any apparent fuel input." Natalie carefully extracted a small cylindrical object from the debris. "This might be a biological sample container. If we can understand their biology, we might find a weakness." The door burst open as armed guards escorted in General Sokolov of the Russian Space Forces. "Dr. Wright, you are needed at the United Nations meeting. Your expertise on the alien technology may prove valuable during the negotiations." Natalie looked at the scattered alien technology. "I need more time. We're just beginning to understand." "Time has run out, Doctor," the general interrupted. "The jet is waiting. You can continue your analysis in New York." In suburban Cleveland, police officer Greg Murphy had been directing evacuation traffic when the shooting started. A military helicopter had approached one of the alien ships and was instantly vaporized by a beam of green light. Panic erupted as people abandoned their cars and ran for shelter. Now Greg found himself in the basement of a local library with 30 frightened civilians. Among them was Alice Bennett, a nurse from the local hospital. "My sister works near downtown." "Alice," said, her voice shaking. "She texted me that they're taking people. The aliens have some kind of troops on the ground now." Greg checked his service pistol. Useless, probably, but it was all he had. "What do you mean, taking people?" "Rounding them up." An elderly man said, "My grandson called. Said they have some kind of robots or soldiers in metal suits. They're gathering people in the city center." Greg made a decision. "Listen up, everyone. We need to stay together and move away from the city. I know some back roads that should be clear. If they're concentrating on downtown, we have a chance to get out." A young man stood up angrily. "And go where? They're everywhere. They're going to kill us all." Alice placed a calming hand on the man's arm. "If they wanted us all dead, they would have done it already. They want something else." Greg nodded. "She's right. And while they're busy taking over, we need to figure out how to fight back." The young man laughed bitterly. "With what? Handguns against spaceships?" Greg's expression was grim but determined. With whatever we have, with everything we have. On the command deck of the Dominator, Commander Zexthal received the initial reports with satisfaction. Human military forces remained largely immobilized, caught between aggression and fear. The first collection centers were being established in major cities. Phase 1 is proceeding as expected, Commander, Sub-Commander Vexnar reported. Minimal resistance so far. And the world leaders? Most have agreed to attend the surrender meeting. Our ground forces are establishing perimeters in 64 primary urban centers. Zexthal nodded. Begin deployment of resource extraction equipment. I want processing facilities operational within 3 planetary rotations. A junior officer approached with a data tablet. Commander, we've lost contact with a scout ship over the northern continent. Zexthal dismissed the concern. Likely a communication malfunction. Send another scout to investigate. And, Commander, Vexnar added hesitantly, there are reports from the ground forces in several locations. The humans are not reacting as expected. Many are fighting rather than fleeing, despite their inferior weapons. Desperation, Zexthal said dismissively. They will learn the futility of resistance soon enough. As he turned back to the view screen showing Earth's blue oceans and green continents, Zexthal felt a momentary disquiet. Something about these humans seemed unpredictable, but he quickly brushed the thought aside. After all, what could a primitive species possibly do against the deadliest warriors the galaxy had ever known? The invasion of Earth continued according to plan. For now. 1 month after the Vraxian invasion began, Earth had changed beyond recognition. Major cities functioned as processing centers where humans were sorted into labor groups. Resource extraction machines tore into the planet's surface, harvesting minerals and metals for the consortium. Yet despite overwhelming technological superiority, the Vraxians faced an unexpected problem. Humans would not stay conquered. In what remained of Chicago, Major Alan Carter crouched in the ruins of an office, building with his team of 12 soldiers. They had spent weeks gathering weapons, recruiting fighters, and studying Vraxian patrol patterns. Today would be their first major strike. Remember, aim for the joints in their armor, Alan whispered to his team. And keep moving. Their targeting systems have trouble with erratic movement patterns. Beside him, Sergeant Rita Diaz checked her modified rifle. The weapon had been enhanced with salvaged Vraxian technology, allowing it to penetrate alien armor. Convoy approaching, 3 transport vehicles, 2 guard units. Alan raised his binoculars. The alien transports moved slowly down Michigan Avenue, carrying processed earth metals to their ships. Perfect target. On my signal, he said and pressed the detonator. The explosion ripped through the street, flipping the lead transport. Before the dust settled, Alan's team opened fire from multiple positions. The Vraxian guards, tall figures in powered armor, immediately returned fire with energy weapons that scorched the concrete where they hit. But the humans kept moving, just as Alan had taught them. They fired, relocated, fired again. 3 Vraxians fell before the aliens realized they were being outmaneuvered by the supposedly primitive humans. Phase 2, Alan ordered into his radio. From the opposite side of the street, another team of resistance fighters emerged from the sewers and attacked with rocket launchers. The remaining transports erupted in flames. The last Vraxian guard tried to call for reinforcements but collapsed as Rita's shot found the vulnerable spot where its helmet joined the body armor. Clear, she reported. Alan approached the burning transports. Salvage team, move in. We have 5 minutes before their response force arrives. His people worked quickly, stripping weapons and technology from the disabled vehicles and dead guards. This was how humanity fought back. Not with grand battles they couldn't win, but with hit-and-run attacks, stealing the enemy's technology and turning it against them. Major, Rita called, holding up a data tablet taken from one of the transports. This might have their patrol schedules. Alan smiled grimly. Good. Every bit of intelligence helps us hit them harder next time. As they melted back into the ruins of the once great city, Alan thought about how the resistance had grown from a handful of soldiers to a global network in just 4 weeks. The Vraxians had no idea what they had awakened on this primitive world. In the underground laboratory beneath the ruins of Moscow University, Dr. Natalie Wright worked tirelessly with her international team. The room was filled with salvaged Vraxian technology and biological samples obtained through increasingly daring raids. "I've confirmed it," she told the assembled scientists, holding up a petri dish. Earth bacteria, specifically a strain of Streptococcus, is highly toxic to Vraxian biology. Their immune systems have no defense against it. Dr. Petrov looked up from his microscope. "Is that why their ground troops always wear full environmental suits?" "Exactly," Natalie replied. "And why they've been setting up atmospheric processors in their bases? They're trying to alter our air to be safer for them." A young scientist named Carlos raised his hand. "But how do we use this? We can't exactly ask them to take off their helmets." Natalie smiled. "We don't have to. Look at this." She pulled up a diagram of the Vraxian environmental suit on a salvaged alien display. "Their filtration systems have a specific refresh cycle. If we can introduce our bacterial agent, during that 2-second window, their entire life support system becomes our delivery mechanism." The room fell silent as the implications became clear. They had found a weakness in the seemingly invincible invaders. "We need to get this information to resistance cells worldwide," Dr. Petrov said. Natalie nodded. "And we need more bacterial samples from different regions. Some strains might be more effective than others." As her team dispersed to their tasks, Natalie looked at the calendar on the wall. 1 month of occupation, and humanity was already finding ways to fight back. The Vraxians had expected submission. Instead, they got ingenuity born of desperation. Officer Greg Murphy's resistance cell had grown from the original 30 people in the library basement to over 300. They operated from an abandoned shopping mall outside Cleveland, with outposts in surrounding suburbs. Today they faced a new challenge. "They're bringing in human collaborators," Greg told his leadership council, "offering extra food and protection to anyone who helps them identify resistance members." Alice Bennett, now their medical director, frowned. "We can't blame people for being scared." "I don't blame them," Greg replied, "but it makes our job harder. We need better intelligence about their operations." An older man named Frank, who had been a ham radio operator before the invasion, spoke up. "I've been in contact with other resistance groups. They're seeing the same thing all over. The aliens are getting frustrated with our attacks." Greg smiled slightly. "Good. Let them know we won't roll over." A young woman named Zoe, who had been a college student before the invasion, entered the room carrying a modified communication device. "You need to hear this. I've been monitoring their frequencies and one of their commanders is really angry." She placed the device on the table and adjusted some controls. A harsh, translated voice filled the room. "Unacceptable casualty rates. These humans fight with no regard for their own survival. Squad 7 was ambushed by children using improvised explosives. How can they send their young to die? What kind of species sacrifices its future for momentary tactical advantage?" The voice continued, increasingly agitated. "Their resistance. Cells operate independently with no central command for us to target. They adapt to our weapons and tactics faster than anticipated. The high command demands answers I cannot provide." Greg and the others exchanged looks of grim satisfaction as the transmission ended. "They don't understand us," Alice said quietly. "No," Greg agreed. "And that's our advantage. They expected us to think like them, to follow their rules of war. But humans don't give up, even when logic says we should." He pointed to a map where they had marked known Vraxian positions. "Their biggest base is here at the old airport. Tomorrow we start probing their defenses. We need to find out if Dr. Wright's bacterial weapon can work." As the meeting broke up, Greg caught Alice looking at a photo of her family she kept in her pocket. "We'll win this," he told her with more confidence than he felt. She nodded. "I know. Because we have no choice. That's something they don't understand about humans. When our backs are against the wall, that's when we're most dangerous." Outside, the alien ship still dominated the sky, but beneath them, a planet full of the most stubborn, adaptable, and determined species the Vraxians had ever encountered, was learning how to fight back. And Commander Zexathal was about to discover that he had made a terrible mistake in underestimating humanity. 6 months into the invasion, Commander Zexathal stood in his private chamber aboard the Dominator, staring at the latest casualty reports. The numbers made no sense. How could a species with such primitive technology inflict so much damage on the most advanced military force in the galaxy? "Enter," he growled at the sound of the door chime. Medical Officer Krell entered, looking visibly ill. More Vraxian troops were falling sick each day, their bodies ravaged by Earth's microscopic life forms that somehow bypass their filtration systems. "Commander, we've lost another 3 outposts to the bacterial weapon. Our troops' immune systems simply cannot adapt quickly enough." Zexathal slammed his fist on the desk. "How are they delivering it through our shields? Our environmental systems are the best in the consortium. The humans..." Krell hesitated. "They are resourceful beyond our experience. They've learned to weaponize their planet's natural biology. They modify our own technology against us faster. Then we can update security protocols." Before Zexathal could respond, the communication panel chimed. The scaled face of High Commander Drasmor, his superior in the consortium hierarchy, appeared on screen. "Commander Zexathal, explain why a primitive world is not yet under control after half a solar cycle." Zexathal stood at attention. "High Commander, the humans are unusual. They lack central command structures, allowing their resistance to continue even when we eliminate their leaders." "They?" "Excuses," Drasmor interrupted. "The consortium expected this world to be producing resources by now. Instead, we receive reports of increasing casualties and equipment losses. We still control the major resource centers," Zexathal argued. "The resistance is an irritation, nothing more. An irritation that has destroyed 17 atmospheric processors and disabled a command cruiser." Drasmor's voice dripped with disdain. "You have 30 cycles to show significant progress or you will be replaced. The consortium does not tolerate failure." The screen went dark, leaving Zexathal seething with anger and, though he would never admit it, fear. For the first time in his long military career, he faced the possibility of defeat. In the mountains outside what was once Denver, Sam Mercer adjusted the controls on his modified radar system. After escaping Alaska when the Vraxians destroyed the radar station, he had joined the resistance and put his technical skills to use. "Got something," he said to Karen Davis, the linguist who worked with him to intercept and translate Vraxian communications. "Looks like a supply ship entering atmosphere." Karen fine-tuned their salvaged alien communication device. "They're using a new encryption, but I can break it." After several minutes of work, the harsh sounds of Vraxian language filled their small cave command center. Automatically translated by their system. Priority shipment of medical supplies for the command carrier. Biological containment protocols in effect. Sam looked at Karen with excitement. "Medical supplies, they're still getting sick." "Dr. Wright's bacterial weapon is working," Karen agreed, "but now they're bringing in something to counter it." Sam grabbed his radio. "I need to alert Major Carter. If we can intercept that ship, we might prevent them from developing an immunity." As he made the call, Sam reflected on how far they had come. 6 months ago, he had been a bored radar technician watching empty skies. Now he was part of a global resistance network fighting alien invaders, using their own technology against them. The Vraxians still controlled the skies, but humans controlled the ground beneath their feet. And every day the aliens learned a painful lesson about underestimating humanity. Dr. Natalie Wright stood in the middle of what had once been a Vraxian processing facility outside Moscow. Now it was a smoldering ruin, alien equipment scattered and damaged. Her team moved through the debris, collecting samples and technology. "The bacterial dispersion worked perfectly," Dr. Petrov told her, holding up a container of murky liquid. "Their filtration systems couldn't detect it until it was too late." Natalie nodded, but her mind was already on the next problem. "They'll adapt eventually. We need something new." A soldier approached carrying a damaged Vraxian data core. "Dr. Wright, we found their communications hub mostly intact." This was the breakthrough they needed. With access to the aliens' internal communications, they could anticipate their movements, perhaps even feed them false information. "Get it to the lab immediately," she ordered. "And be careful. They might have booby-trapped it." As her team packed up to leave before Vraxian reinforcements arrived, Natalie paused to look at the sky. The massive alien ships still hovered there, but fewer than before. Some had been damaged by the increasingly effective human attacks. Others had been recalled to protect the command carrier after a daring strike led by Major Carter had breached its outer defenses. For the first time since the invasion began, Natalie felt real hope. Humanity was not just surviving, it was fighting back with growing effectiveness. The deadliest species in the galaxy had met its match on this supposedly primitive world. In what remained of Washington, D.C., President Laura Bennett met with the Unified Resistance leadership in the reinforced bunker beneath the ruins of the Pentagon. Representatives from resistance groups around the world attended either in person or via secure communications. "The plan is working," she told them. "The Vraxians are losing ground in every major theater. Their biological vulnerability continues to be our greatest advantage." General Mason pointed to a world map showing Vraxian-controlled territories in red and contested areas in yellow. The red areas had been shrinking steadily for weeks. Major Carter's forces have crippled their North American command center. Officer Murphy's network has disrupted their entire Midwest operation, and Dr. Wright's bacterial weapons have forced them to abandon multiple processing facilities. But they still have overwhelming firepower, someone pointed out, and control of orbit. "Not for long," the president replied. "Dr. Wright, please share your latest discovery." Natalie stepped forward. "We've analyzed their ship-to-ship communications and identified a critical vulnerability in their navigation systems. If we can disrupt the quantum entanglement network they use for coordination, their ships will be temporarily blinded." "How temporarily?" General Mason asked. "Perhaps 30 minutes, maybe less if they adapt quickly." "That's our window," the president said firmly. "We hit every major Vraxian installation simultaneously while their orbital support is blind. This is our chance to turn the tide decisively." Around the room, resistance leaders nodded in grim determination. The plan was dangerous, with a narrow margin for success, but it was the best opportunity they'd had since the invasion began. "Commence Operation Slingshot in 48 hours, the president ordered. "May God help us all." On the command deck of the Dominator, Commander Zexethal received yet another report of a facility lost to human resistance fighters. His officers avoided meeting his gaze, fear evident in their postures. "Commander," Subcommander Vexnar said, hesitantly, "perhaps we should consider tactical withdrawal to regroup. We could return with a larger force better prepared for this unusual species." Zexthal glared at his second-in-command. "Withdraw? And tell the consortium what? That the deadliest warriors in the galaxy were defeated by primitive mammals who have barely mastered space travel?" "With respect, Commander," Vexnar persisted, "these humans are unlike any species we have encountered. They do not surrender when defeat is logical. They adapt at an alarming rate. And most disturbing of all, they seem to grow more effective the more we pressure them." Zexthal turned back to the view screen showing the blue planet that had become his nightmare. "No withdrawal. We will crush their remaining resistance with overwhelming force. Prepare for orbital bombardment of all major population centers." His officers moved to comply. Zexthal failed to notice the brief fluctuation in the ship's quantum communication network, the first sign that humanity's most ambitious counterattack was about to begin. Operation Slingshot began at dawn. Across the globe, resistance fighters activated devices built using stolen Vraxian technology. These devices sent a precisely calibrated signal that disrupted the quantum entanglement network used by the alien fleet for navigation and coordination. In his command center beneath Denver, Sam Mercer watched the monitors as the signal propagated. "It's working. Their ship-to-ship communications are down." Karen Davis nodded, her eyes fixed on the translation feed from the Vraxian emergency channels. "They're confused. Orbital ships have lost targeting capabilities and can't coordinate with ground forces." Sam picked up the secure radio. "All units commence Phase 2. We have 30 minutes." Around the world, the coordinated counterattack launched with precision born of desperate months of planning. In Chicago, Major Alan Carter led his strike team into the main Vraxian ground base while their orbital support was blind. In Cleveland, Officer Greg Murphy's resistance cell attacked the processing center that had been their target for months. And in Moscow, Dr. Wright's team moved to secure the atmospheric processor the aliens used to make Earth's air breathable for their kind. But the most crucial mission fell to a small team led by President Bennett herself. Their target, the Vraxian command carrier Dominator. Commander Zexthal roared in fury as alarms blared across the command deck. Screens flickered with static, and his officers scrambled to restore the ship's systems. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Some kind of localized disruption field," a technical officer reported. "It's affecting our quantum network. We've lost contact with all ships and ground forces." "Impossible!" Zexthal slammed his fist on the command console. "These primitives cannot have the technology to disrupt quantum entanglement. They're using our own technology against us," Sub-Commander Vexnar said quietly. "Salvaged and repurposed." Before Zexthal could respond, a new alarm sounded. "Commander, we have a breach in the lower hangar deck. Human forces have somehow bypassed our shields." Zexthal drew his energy weapon. "Security teams to the hangar deck. I will deal with these vermin personally." As he marched from the command deck, Vexnar watched him go with growing unease. The humans had proven more dangerous than any species they had encountered in centuries of conquest. And now they had brought the fight directly to the Vraxian flagship. President Bennett moved quickly through the massive hangar of the Dominator, surrounded by Major Carter and a small team of elite soldiers. They had infiltrated using a captured Vraxian shuttle, its identification code still valid due to the communications disruption. "Remember the plan," she told her team. "Dr. Wright's biological package must reach the central air processing system. Everything else is secondary." Major Carter nodded grimly. "The path to the central core should be this way based on the schematics we recovered." They moved swiftly through the alien corridors, encountering confused resistance from Vraxian crew, members who hadn't expected humans to penetrate their most secure vessel. The bacterial weapons developed by Dr. Wright proved devastatingly effective in the enclosed spaces of the ship, leaving alien soldiers gasping and incapacitated as their environmental suits failed to filter the modified pathogens. As they approached the central core, they encountered heavier resistance. Energy weapons fire scorched the walls around them as Vraxian security forces established a defensive position. "We need to push through," the president said, checking the specialized delivery system she carried. "We're running out of time." Major Carter signaled to his team, "Suppressing fire. Cover the president." As the soldiers laid down covering fire, President Bennett sprinted toward the environmental control room. A Vraxian officer appeared in her path, weapon raised. She ducked under his shot and slid across the polished floor, firing her own captured alien weapon. The Vraxian fell, and she continued her advance. In the main generator room of the Moscow atmospheric processor, Dr. Wright worked quickly to override the alien systems. Her team had fought their way in during the communications blackout, suffering casualties but achieving their objective. "Almost there," she told Dr. Petrov, who covered the entrance with a modified Vraxian weapon. "Once we reverse the atmospheric conversion, their troops will be exposed to Earth's natural atmosphere." "Hurry," he urged. "Their systems are starting to adapt to our disruption field. We may not have the full 30 minutes." Natalie's fingers flew over the alien controls, applying everything she had learned in months of studying their technology. With a final command sequence, she redirected the processor to remove the Vraxian-friendly compounds from the air, and instead distribute a concentrated version of the bacterial agent that had proved so effective against the invaders. "It's done," she said, stepping back from the console. "Now we need to get this data to the other resistance cells. If we can reprogram all their atmospheric processors, we can make the entire planet uninhabitable for them without environmental suits." Commander Zexthal arrived at the central core just as President Bennett reached the environmental control room. Their eyes met across the chamber, the leader of the galactic invaders face to face with the leader of the supposedly primitive defenders. You cannot win, Zexthal growled, raising his weapon. Even if you disable this ship, our consortium will send hundreds more. President Bennett stood tall, despite the exhaustion of months of desperate resistance. Perhaps, but they'll find a planet of humans ready for them, and now we know how to hurt you. Arrogant to the end, Zexthal said, his finger tightening on the trigger. A shot rang out, but it came from behind the commander. Zexthal stumbled forward, a look of shock on his reptilian face. Behind him stood Subcommander Vexnar, his weapon still raised. Enough, Vexnar said. This invasion was a mistake from the beginning. Zexthal collapsed to the floor as President Bennett stared in surprise at the Vraxian second-in-command. Why? She asked. Because I have studied your species these past months, Vexnar replied. You are unlike any we have encountered. You value freedom above life itself. You adapt faster than any known intelligence, and you fight with a ferocity that cannot be broken by conventional means. He lowered his weapon. The consortium would sacrifice countless more lives to subjugate your world. I cannot allow that. 3 days later, the remains of the Vraxian invasion force gathered above Earth's atmosphere. Most of their ground troops had been decimated by the modified bacterial agents now circulating globally. Their command carrier was under human control. And Subcommander, now Commander, Vexnar had ordered all forces to withdraw. On the bridge of the Dominator, now temporarily a place of uneasy truce, Vexnar addressed the human leadership. I will report to the consortium that Earth is to be classified as a deadly hazard zone, unsuitable for conquest or colonization. I cannot guarantee they will heed this warning forever, but it will give you time. President Bennett nodded. And we'll use that time to prepare. Your technology that we've borrowed will help us advance our defenses. You would be wise to do so, Vexnar said. There are other species in the galaxy as aggressive as mine, though perhaps none who so severely underestimated their opponent. As the Vraxian ships departed Earth's orbit, humans worldwide celebrated their hard-won victory. In farmhouses like Lily Hoffman's in Nebraska, in radar stations like the one where Sam Mercer once worked, in cities where resistance fighters emerged, from hiding, people looked to the stars with new understanding. They were not alone in the universe, and now the universe knew that humans were not to be trifled with. In the secure bunker beneath the Pentagon, President Bennett watched the alien fleet depart on the monitors. Major Carter stood at her side. Do you think they'll come back? He asked. Eventually, she replied. But next time, we'll be ready for them. As the last Vraxian ship disappeared from Earth's sensors, somewhere in the vast reaches of space, a new warning beacon activated near the solar system. The Galactic Consortium received Vexnar's final report, which would become required study for all military academies throughout the galaxy. The third planet of this unremarkable yellow star hosts the deadliest species we have encountered, not for their technology, but for their indomitable spirit. The consortium would be wise to avoid Earth and its inhabitants. They should be left undisturbed. The warning beacon, translated into all major galactic languages, stated simply, "Caution, humans.